So I'm really curious about your discovery of blockchain technology, and maybe if you could like list a little bit of like your philosophy or Groupmuse's philosophy kind of on utilizing this brand new technology that's just it's in its nascent development right
Yeah,
now.
absolutely. I would love to. I think about it all the time. One thing I want to make really clear from the get-go, though, before we get too deep into the blockchain
For
convo,
sure.
is that GroupMuse is a cooperative, and we are a worker-owned cooperative. We're also becoming a musician-owned multi-stakeholder cooperative. So I am the founder of GroupMuse and like act as the de facto spokesperson. But blockchain is an incredibly fissile issue. It's controversial for a lot of folk. And as however like convinced I might be of blockchain's possibilities, that does not mean that Groupmuse is going to adopt a blockchain, like move into the space. I think that it
Okay.
should, and I want it too. And so it's kind of like my job is to articulate why it feels important, why it feels essential, and the ecosystem has to come along on its own terms. And I actually do believe that at the end of the day, that ironically is what makes us such a perfect candidate for a blockchain because we actually do have an ecosystem. It's a real decentralized ecosystem that has its own kind of essence. It's a garden that grows unto its own sort of logic, and so I can't. So I have my opinions and perspective on blockchain and what it might mean for Groupmuse, but I just want to really emphasize that that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where Groupmuse is at. It has to be an organic process that the ecosystem moves into of its own accord. And part of the reason why that feels so important to say is because there are a lot of stakeholders in the Groupmuse community who are not like totally convinced of a blockchain future, and like, I don't want to get on a podcast and be like, hey, guess what, everyone? This is what we're doing. It's a fait accompli. We already said it, like to the press. It's just not like that at all. It really is. Like, I have my dreams and ambitions for it, and other members of the team do. I am not at all alone on the team. We are a team of visionaries. Um, but we're all in different places with it. We've all had different experiences
Mhm.
with it, and I'm not about to just try to like cram a square peg into a round hole, but rather just
Mhm.
like create this a space for revelation, for like education, for coming of age in a time when we have basically been told that we don't deserve anything good. And here's something that actually could be really good, and we need to come to that possibility on our own terms. So I'm so excited to talk about blockchain, but I want to make very clear that it's my own perspective, and I am on steering committee and I am founder of Groupmuse. But what I say does not go in the least. It's an ongoing conversation. So yeah, happy to take any questions
And
about that or anything else.
I love how you just described GroupView. So when the signal cut out, I was like, I'm gonna skip past the business, being for business versus nonprofit
Right.
and all that. And then you immediately came back and like segued
Yeah.
into it. But what you just described, which I love, to some degree, GroupMuse is operating like a DAO.
Really.
It
I
is a
mean,
DAO.
Like you're already
it is a
operating
DAO.
like a blockchain, where even though you're the creator, you're the founder, but it's like, hey, it's not all up for me. I'm going to advocate for it. Like all
Yes.
decentralized things, like there is different hierarchies, and we naturally fall into that as humans. We kind of naturally need it. If we need the
Nobody's in
programmers.
Right.
charge.
Yeah, it's like no one's fully in charge, but like we need someone to like do the programming or say, hey, this is dangerous if you do it
Right.
like this. Like let's
Mhm.
have these balances. But in essence, you described uh somewhat of a decentralized
100%.
organization
Yeah,
yourself.
GroupMuse is a
Yeah.
protocol. I mean, like GroupMuse is it's a protocol. It's like, okay, you bring these actors together and you do these three things, and community follows. And so it's a protocol that allows for emergence to set a container to allow for something beautiful and utterly unique to emerge. Every GroupMuse is completely different. There's no way of like top down controlling for all the possible outcomes, and we have no interest in that. I agree with you completely. I mean, that's Groupmuse has been on the path towards cooperativism for years. Before I knew Dick one
Mhm.
about blockchain, we were all about that impulse to decentralize power in the classical music world. And I do feel that the COVID conundrum made so painfully clear how overdue that is when like all the classical
Mhm.
music power in every city is concentrated into a few institutions that have all like the gatekeepers to every classical patron in town. Well, if they can't open their doors because of public health issues, then every musician in town is up Shit's Creek with a turd for a paddle. There's nothing that anyone can do. There hasn't been an effort to decentralize this power and to say, okay, well, there are so many people in a city who love classical music. Right now, they're putting all of that energy and intention into one institution. But if we can do the work to actually distribute out that intention, and I do feel like Groupmuse is, I can say without a doubt, the most sustained and serious effort to decentralize power in the classical music world and has been for almost a decade.
Mhm,
So it's kind of
mhm,
like it's such a natural fit. It's such a natural fit. And I agree. It is basically a DAO. It's basically a blockchain. You know, it's like with each successive group muse, the meaning with each block that we add to the chain, the meaning of this cultural community deepens and it becomes something that's more resilient that more people have faith in. Oh, now we've had 6,000 group muses. So 6,000, the 6,001st feels like that much more secure because it's drawing on this past. And I mean, I actually,
history.
it goes back to that question of honoring history, and I actually believe the blockchain to be a profoundly spiritual technology, and for so many reasons that I'd be happy to get into. But yeah, that's part of its essence is how impossible it is to alienate the past from the present on blockchain, and like that's that's magic. We need that so badly, you know, because the propaganda machine is constantly trying to erase our past to make us forget that we've been here a
Mhm.
hundred times before.
Yo, it's so crazy, like how you describe that for like cementing the
Yeah,
history for the future and like the history in a transparent and honest way
amen.
that acknowledges mistakes, that acknowledges glitches and bumps. Um, I I I I agree with you on so many points. Before we delve any
Yeah,
deeper, for our faking notes listeners, our faking fam, it would it be possible for you to define what a DAO or a DAO is, because I'm sure many people haven't really kind of
correct.
uh, been
Yeah,
in it. Yeah, they haven't figured it
yeah.
out yet.
I mean, a DAO stands for a decentralized autonomous organization, and the idea is that basically, if you can establish a set of protocols and an incentivization mechanism that you can get humans to energetically participate in an ecosystem for a particular purpose without needing centralized command and having faith that if you set the terms and you set the incentives effectively enough, like the emergent outcome will be more beautiful and in deeper integrity than anything that could be optimized for through centralized control. Because, like, human beings, at least modern humans, love to plan and love to pretend we know what's going to happen in our heads, but we don't. And the more we try to like hold on to like this has to go this way, so this can go this way, so we get this outcome, the more we find that like it's that old expression, we make plans and God laughs. I feel that a DAO is a perfect resolution to that conundrum by basically saying like we can set forth our values, we can set forth the structure,
Mhm.
and then and the incentives, which are obviously really important because you have to have an incentive structure such that people are like eager to energetically participate at a time when we need money to survive. Um, that we can just have faith that if we do a good enough job setting the terms, that what we don't know exactly what'll emerge, but it'll be beautiful and it'll be in integrity because that's how nature actually works. And nature has innumerably many agents of their own essence that are working together in a field that has certain terms that are laid out from the very beginning, even if it's just like the laws of gravity, or the dictates of photosynthesis or whatever the heck it is. Um,
Mhm.
that we don't know exactly what the forest is going to look like, but it'll be beautiful, it'll be abundant, there'll be plenty of fruit, and it'll give us shade, and it'll sequester carbon. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and so and so I guess that's kind of how I see the decentralized autonomous organization. It's setting the terms for an ecosystem that kind of has a purpose and a premise to emerge on its own terms and to kind of relinquish that top down control that I think has really done so much damage to the planet. Does that make does
And
that
even
does that feel like
just
uh,
examples.
yeah?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, I think that like that's a perfect sense and was a great explainer. And I think even just some like direct examples is so in blockchain we've got these things called DeFi, decentralized finance. Think of it, it's bank on the blockchain. It's run by DAOs. So you suddenly you're getting banking done, and you're also a board member on the bank.
Right.
If I like the community's voting on something, should we
Amazing.
increase these
Yeah.
loan percentages? Should we actually give more back to the bank so that they can hire developers to grow the bank? Should we stake this token? Should we do all these things? And you're having to say, if I called up Wells Fargo and I said, "Hey,
Uh,
I'd like to reduce my fees. I think it'd be better for everyone." How
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 about
far do
there's
you think
no
that's?
like overdraft fee?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
I'd
not
be
even
like,
gonna
you know
get a
what?
human on the
Overdraft fees.
phone.
Yeah.
They'll just put you through a maze of like press three for press one for press one. I'm like, can I talk to a human? Like there are no humans anymore.
Yeah.
It's just a corporate
Like, we'll
monolith.
process this in 10 to 15 days.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so there's so
All
many
the
examples
humans
of that.
are on their golf courses.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm curious. Of course, uh, Groupmuse is functioning kind of like a DAO now. But uh, where do you see if this goes through, if it's voted on by the members,
Yeah.
uh, where would you see blockchain fitting into Groupmuse?
Well, I'll say I have spent a lot of time thinking about what a currency might mean
Mhm.
for Groupmuse, a Muse coin. Um, I have spent relatively less time thinking about what the DAO would look like and how it would work. It's just like such a vast world and such a vast literature. Um, and there's so much that's happening every day, all the time. Um, so
Yeah.
so so
Mm.
I'll speak to how I understand the potential for a cryptocurrency like a Muse coin to underpin our cultural ecosystem. Again, with the caveat that this is just my big mouth spouting hot air like I do as a double Libra. Um, but
I'm a Libra too,
hell
bro.
yeah,
This is
this
how
is
we
how we
work.
work, dude. This is how
This
we
is how we
move the
work, bro.
air, and then the earthly signs can plant the seeds. You know,
Yeah, but we're just
we're
hot
just,
air. We're just
but
hot.
you need hot air, and you want it to be like hot.
You do. You want to be so it floats above the
Exactly,
atmosphere, bro.
exactly.
We're on
You
the
know, you
same page.
freaking
We're
get
on the
it,
same
dude.
page.
Libra fan, dude. Libra fan. Um, so here's what I'll say about a Muse coin. The basic premise of the currency would be like, okay, what is a well now that tokens that crypto allows us to tokenize what was before kind of like ineffable ritual. What are the rituals that can underpin a reliable currency? What does underpin a reliable currency? How can you have faith in a dollar? Well, you have faith in a dollar because at the end of the day, you expect the U.S. government to get your back and say like, this is what this is worth. And if you argue with that, we have 700 military bases all over the world that have a bone.
We have
Yeah,
drones.
we got drones. So like, all right,
We got
Yeah, what
drones.
you gonna
what are
do,
you gonna
bro?
do? We got
Take
you.
the
Yeah,
money.
take the fucking money. Um, so the premise of a Muse coin is basically this. The thinking would be in its simplest incarnation. At present, for people to RSVP to a Groupmuse, it costs $5, right? What if instead of costing $5, you bought $5 worth of Musecoin, right? And from a user end perspective, you might not even know the difference. Yeah, you have like a number in your wallet on your account that gets larger, but from your perspective, it's $5 to RSVP. It's the same as it was before. But what it means from the perspective of the currency is there's perpetual upward pressure, perpetual demand, because there's this one utterly solid use case. And it's simple and it's wholesome and it's scalable and it's age old. I mean, whether the towers fall or the oceans rise, people will continue to gather to listen to music in intimate ways. It's as durable a human ritual as I could possibly imagine. It's the oldest thing that we have ever done, perhaps, is gather, and like you say, the cave drawings with music making on the wall from 40,000 years ago. And so the idea is that if we can bake the use case, the first level use case into the very fabric of the ecosystem, into the ritual. When you go to a Groupmuse, you RSVP for $5 worth of Musecoin. Then built into the protocol of the currency is this notion that anytime someone plays a Groupmuse, they receive an allotment of Musecoin. Of course, they also receive any US dollar we could possibly gather for them. Like we would never say like this is in lieu of dollars. No, of course not. Like people need to pay what's in their pockets, put it in the musicians' hats. They need to buy groceries tonight. But they would also get an allotment of Musecoin. And the idea is now that they're stakeholders, really, they have an asset in this community. They have every incentive to get all of their friends to RSVP and all of their friends to host because anytime anyone RSVPs to a Groupmuse, the value of the Musecoin goes up, even if it's infinitesimally small, even if it wouldn't register. But if 100,000 people a week are doing it, all of a sudden it puts perpetual upward pressure, upward demand on a currency that I believe could serve as like actually a reliable currency because culture and ritual have the power to stabilize what is otherwise very volatile. I mean, everyone talking about the
Mm-hmm.
volatility of the crypto markets, I think that's totally right. That's 100% on point because the use cases thus far are, for the most part, not super grounded. I mean, the use case for Bitcoin at this point is pretty well grounded. If you want, like like a transnational, untraceable transaction, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's perfect for that use case. But ultimately, I feel that the wild fluctuations have more to do with like market caprices, hype speculation, booms and busts. And it's kind of
Elon Musk
Elon Musk
tweets.
tweets, for example. It's kind of yeah,
Memes.
memes for sure. And actually, I mean, Dogecoin is a perfect example of the power that culture
Mhm.
can play in creating value, 100%. But it's meme culture. It's inherently kind of like capricious. Everyone's like into it for a second, and then poof, it goes because like I mean, like that's kind of the nature of memes. They come and go, but this music is defined by the fact that it's still around, right? That's what makes it
Mhm.
great. The fact that it's been around for 300 years and it will be around for 300 more years as long as we're around, as long as the planet's around, and or at least the biosphere's around. And and so that's kind of like the most basic premise, and that if we have a currency that we not only can incentivize musicians with, but also potentially incentivize hosts with, and and for that matter, incentivize RSVPs with, because that's obviously the thing that really breaks this.
They're building the
Right,
organization
literally.
by
Right.
doing that.
They're
Mhm.
building the organization. They're creating the value, and it's value
Mhm.
that necessarily uplifts the creator community, necessarily uplifts artists. That's baked into it. And I mean, I think a very fair knock on crypto at this point is it has created a huge amount of wealth for like white bros who are like tech heads and who are all up on Discord and Reddit. Bless them. They
Yeah,
brought and
Twitter.
Twitter.
Telegram.
Clubhouse
Yeah.
and on.
Don't talk to me on
And,
Telegram.
and like
Yeah.
this community, like it's no knock. It's like it's a beautiful thing that's been built, but I think now it's essential to start bringing artists into the fray, community builders into the fray, diverse actors in the human drama, uh, so that it doesn't just propagate the same kind of like value set that I think has dominated the world up until this point, which is I think like yeah, very masculine, techno utopic. I would say very white vision of what
Imperialist
imperialist,
capitalism.
colonialist.
Libertarian
Right,
utopia.
exactly,
Like,
exactly. All those things, like this vision of an again, I tend to see things in terms of like the yin and yang, the ascent versus the
Yeah,
descent. All about the ascent, not enough about that kind of listening, more feminized aspect of like the descent, the roots, the history, where we come from. It's all about just like the whiz bang idea that's going to shoot us to the moon. I mean, how much more like you don't need a better image to illustrate this whole like this social pathology than with Elon Musk and like shooting a car at the moon, or Jeff Bezos
yeah,
shooting himself to the moon. And it's like
in a flying
in a
penis.
flying penis,
Like,
literally. It's like how separate from the earth can you get? Like their billions of dollars are trying to just alienate them from their earthly reality that we are the earth. It's all good. Like she takes us back. It's all good. You don't have to shoot yourself to the moon to be safe. It's like we all belong here, but there's this like panic and this fear that I think underpins so much of this worldview, this ascent oriented, what you could call the colonized mind. Um, and so yeah, so I believe deeply that if this technology is going to deliver on its promise, it's because we build protocols that can put wealth in the hands of artists who have never had wealth before. That's never happened. So we don't actually know what society looks like, what capitalism looks like, if the people who have capital are not just Wall Street jockeys who have this grinding intensity and super weird values and like super competitive and like don't work on expanding their hearts or their spiritual worlds at all, but instead put the money in the hands of artists, creators, people who are listening, culture,
culture.
right?
yeah,
Let me tell you something,
Please.
bro. As a black person in America, if you don't understand that the culture of America comes from black
Yeah.
people and that it is commodified and sold by white people and repurposed by white people, and none of the value goes back to the black people that originated, this is, I really believe, a way that black people can get connected to capital in a, based off of our ability to build
Yes.
culture, our soul. And so that's the fact that you said that is connecting to me
Yeah.
so much. The fact that musicians and artists, by creating community, by creating culture, they can actually have a tangible asset that appreciates in value that they then can use to interact with the material world. Because art is more of the
Yes.
spiritual world, it's the intangible, but it's a connection between the
Yes.
two.
and that's what I love about it too, is that you can't be redlined or denied because of some credit score in decentralized finance. Like that's not part of it.
Right.
Like they can't do it. We're still working. We'll vote on that though.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah, we'll vote
put
on
it
it,
in
but
pro.
yeah.
Yeah, pro. We'll enact the like some redlining.
Yeah.
But 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 what is blockchain great at? Like the decentralization. But a big part of that is
Right.
origin. Where did something come from? What's the
Right.
first? It's immutable, it's tangible. And so for all these things that are created and then stolen later without any of the profits like coming back down, like that's something that blockchain can really do a great part of it. But what I like for all three of us, like what we're kind of aligned on it, is that blockchain's been around, a decade or so, and it's evolving, it's growing, but now it's an opportunity. It's the tech's kind of finally hitting a point to where you don't have to be super tech bro understanding the code to get
Yep.
involved in this space. Like no wonder it was gate kept. It was so complicated to buy a
Oh my
Bitcoin. It was
god.
so unintuitive. It was so hidden away. And kudos to them. They can, ride on their
Millions,
penis
yeah,
shaped rockets into
millions and
space.
billions of dollars. They dialed it in.
Yeah, and
Good for
yeah,
them.
so
Good
good
for
for you.
them.
But now it's time, and why I like people like you, Sam, and what Drew and I are trying to do too, is that we see an
Yeah.
opportunity. There's this new. It's new. It's this new tech, and we just want to be part of the conversation to shape it. I don't want just tech bro rocket guys on Twitter
Yes.
with going to moon to make more money to buy more cars. Like no, like wait, we've built something great
Yes.
here. Like this can be used for
Yes.
good. We even just brought this up in a recent conversation. Nuclear
Yeah.
energy.
Mhm.
It's the same thing that created the bomb. that can cause so much
Right.
destruction. It's the same thing that can create energy, and then who knows where it can, it can take us in outer
Right.
space. We can take it in so many different directions, and I just see blockchain being the same. And so I want artists to be a part of that conversation and shaping
As
this.
soon
I
They
as
don't
need to be
possible.
I don't want it in 20 years. I don't want
today.
20 years artists to come in. No, no, like we need it now. And so like for I think for all of us on this call, like I just see like this can be it. This can be a part of it. It's not going to solve every issue, but I think this can take us in the right step from what it's granted to us. And I just want the right people to be part of the
Yes.
conversation.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. And that ultimately what it can mean is that power in society for now, because all of like economic power as I understand it has largely been predicated on like shares or stocks in an institution, right? And that before the crypto movement, it was all like you built wealth by having a share or a bond of an institution. And like, love them or hate them, you cannot deny that an institution is an anti-ecological phenomenon. On an earth of perpetual change, an institution desperately tries to cling to its own shape, its own structure, its own power arrangement that it ordained from its inception. And that becomes more pathological as the institution gets larger and the world continues to change. Now, with cryptocurrency, we have the possibility of building wealth not through a share in an institution, but a currency in an ecosystem of exchange. And to me, that makes it the most ecological technology we've ever happened upon. Like proof of work aside, obviously we're all moving to proof of stake.
Yeah.
Classic knock on Bitcoin, but
Hmm.
Proof of history,
Yeah.
proof of authority. There are other ways to do
100%. There,
this.
there, there
Yeah.
are so many, and I really believe that it is the most important ecological technology we've ever had because it allows us to build wealth in an ecologically sound way based on ecosystems of exchange, like I say, not shares in an institution which need to extract greater and greater profits as the years go on. It couldn't be simpler. A
Mhm,
currency is valuable if people are buying and holding it, if it's changing hands. That's
mhm,
all it needs in order to build that wealth. And that's why I feel
mhm.
like, people of the more, you could say, yin aspect, the more sort of like feminized aspect, artists, people who are receptive listeners and who are, creative, inquisitive types, as opposed to like top down type A, like let's get the bolts down and suck as much profit out of this earth as we can in these last 15 years of the planet or whatever they're
Mhm.
like putting a tool of wealth generation in the hands of a community that kind of coheres with that orientation. It is more about like exchange, communion, transaction, transformation than it is about like, it being this like monolithic tower that sucks energy from the earth. Like it's a huge piece of what we've been missing, what we've been aching for. And there is this question, and I really welcome the skepticism, and I think that's that cold water on my hot air, which I totally appreciate because it keeps me
Mhm.
calibrated and like inquisitive in this conversation, so I don't become just some sort of like foaming mouth zealot. But truly, for me, the question
Yeah.
of like, oh, is blockchain good? Is cryptocurrency good? That's up to me and you. That's the technology is
Yeah.
agnostic. What
Hmm.
matters now is who's part of the conversation. And if you count yourself out
Mhm.
because of everyone who's been part of the conversation up until this point, we all lose. We all need to say,
Yeah.
we have to be part of this conversation. This is
Mhm.
the commons. This is the and definitionally so. It's permissionless. Like that's part of what defines a cryptocurrency that anyone can join. So whoever's listening, like please just like don't count yourself out. If you are skeptical about its power, be there for the conversation. Be part of it. Figure out ways that it can benefit you and your community and what you want for your world, because these are the
Mhm.
formative days. And if we're not here right now, who
Yeah.
knows how it'll
Right
grow?
now.
Who knows who will monopolize it? Not. I mean, I think it's inherently anti, like it inherently kind of avoids monopolization. But I don't want to just take that as like a religious dictum. I want to say like, okay, that's part of its strength, and also be part of the conversation. Be here with it.